In a previous video, we got the big dust collector back up and running using a combination of 3D printing and CNC machining. Now the problem is I have no way of connecting that dust collector to my Makita planer to be able to use it. I'd like to 3D print an adapter piece, but it's going to be a huge print and I don't want to risk screwing it up. So rather than jumping directly into Fusion 360 at this point, I'm going to use one of these instead. So stick around. So this is my planer and I really like this planer. It does not come standard with some sort of way of collecting the dust. So this would have just shot all of the sawdust all over the floor. And I guess maybe for some shops, like maybe if it's in a barn, that's okay, but definitely not for my shop. So a few years ago, I 3D scanned the back of this planer and I came up with this 3D printed dust collection system. And it works okay. My shop vac hose just attaches to here. And the smaller shop vac hose can also attach just on the inside. So there are a few issues with this. Number one, it doesn't look very good. Doesn't look like it was professionally designed. And it doesn't look like it belongs to this machine. So I'd like to address that. Number two, this comes out the center and the hose droops down, which means I don't tend to use the center of the planer. I have to go to each side. And number three, when I plane material on each side, the collection is horrific at the sides. It just does not collect any sawdust and it all gets bunched up in here. Number four, these gaps are a little bit too large, so some sawdust spits out the side as well. And number five, this was printed in two pieces. I would really prefer it to be printed in one if that's possible. Not really sure at this point whether that's going to be. So I thought we would use a combination of old school and new school 3D printing to come up with a brand new version. And as usual, I'll make it available to anybody that has the same planer. First, I'd like to hook up my shop vac and run it just as is. We'll have a look right through the front and see what's happening with that sawdust inside there. So we didn't have many passes there and there's sawdust all over the place. Sawdust on the tripod, sawdust on the floor, off to the side. It was shooting out here a little bit, not too bad out of here. A little bit coming out of here, a little bit on the sides. So hopefully it's pretty obvious that I need to make some changes to this. So I'm going to get this all cleaned up. We'll get this lid off of here and have a look at how this is attached. And this has some pretty sticky adhesive on it. I think it was the exterior grade automotive tape. So I'm not sure if the heat gun's going to work with this, but I'm going to give that a try. So I think the best way to approach this would not be to go directly into the software using a 3D scan, but rather to go old school and create a template on here, something that we can actually use and test out and maybe even modify to see if it's all working properly. We'll shoot the camera in the front there as well with some light, make sure that it is doing exactly what we expect it to do. So we're going to need a sharp knife, a glue gun, glue sticks, and a cardboard box. I'm a little bit surprised with this being a popular planer from the past that there aren't any good options for dust collection. There are maybe 3 or 4 options. They are a combination of wood or maybe metal. Some are ductwork. One person even cut a hole in the top panel and put some ductwork coming right out of there. I think that is a big no-no. Hopefully by the end of this video, we'll have a much better option. So I definitely do not want something coming off the center. Also, something coming up wouldn't work well either, because there's going to be boards on the top of here and those boards would hit that pipe. So really all that we have left to choose from is either this side or that side. And I've got the switch at this side and I've got the hand wheel already, so I think I will just have the pipe over on this side as well. The pipe is a 5-inch, I think it's inside diameter, not 100% sure yet, I don't have it, but this is 5 3/4. It should give us a little bit of wiggle room to work with. It just doesn't look like this is going to work properly, so I went ahead and remade it to this version. Okay, an angle like that, but it's still not right. Remade it again, and it really kicks out further on the bottom here as well. So that's not too bad, and the corrugated pipe that I'm going to attach may end up being around the outside, so I want to be careful with that. So what I think I'm going to do is have the pipe off to the side like that. It will make it a bit longer, but I can break it into pieces if I need to. Now this needs to come off, so I'm going to use the heat gun for that. I think that's starting to look really good. Now we need to fill in a piece. We need to go from this width to this width. Got a couple problems. One is the cardboard only wants to bend in one direction. I'm changing shape at different rates and I'm changing angles at different rates, and I just don't think that having a single piece of cardboard is going to work here. If I did, I'd really need to make it much more malleable. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is anytime that it transitions to a different type of shape, like from a straight line to a curve, I'm going to make a cut. So for example, on this side, I have a curved piece, but over on this side, I have a flat. So I'm going to taper from a triangle that is this wide, where the flat section is, to nothing over on this corner. I would say it probably took me close to a half an hour just to do the glue up. So maybe an hour overall to come up with this. And I don't know whether it's actually going to work. So let's go ahead and get this on the machine. Well, I have to say that looks pretty good. You can see this is at a slight angle on the downward, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. You can see there we have a bit of clearance. The pipe should attach outside of there. So even if the pipe does come down, it's not going to impede anything coming through here. I just noticed right under here, there's a bit of a gap, and I think I'd like that to be filled in. So I'm going to use some cardboard. And this is what it looks like filled. So the next step is to connect this to my dust collector, and this video was in jeopardy of not making it on time because I got a warning saying the delivery was delayed. Luckily, it arrived. This is the 5" by 10" clear PVC hose. This is supposed to be pretty high quality hose, and it's supposed to be able to fit a 5" outside diameter. So the ID on this should be able to stretch or fit an exact 5". That said, this is probably not going to be the exact right size, but that's okay. We'll make it work. What do you think is going to happen to this when we connect that pipe to this, to the dust collector? Let me know what you think before we actually do it in the comments down there below. Probably isn't going to go too well with this plug in here, so we're definitely going to need to do something about that. I did spend a little bit of time cleaning it up just to make sure it wasn't too rough on the inside. Steel to steel, a little over 5". So perfect. So that means that I can remake this for the dust collector with just one piece coming out at 5", and I will have a little bit of a lip on it as well, just like I did with these ones. Here's the new one. So now we have the 5". Before I was using a 4", but it had the splitter on it as well. So let's just do a quick test. So that works out to about 930 CFM, which is dramatically more than what I had before. I think I was getting a little over 400, 450 or so, which I guess makes a bit of sense because the total volume of air that this is able to move is dramatically larger than what you'd have on a 4". Eventually, I'll switch over to smooth pipe and only have a short section of corrugated hose. This is in there nice. It is putting a little bit of downward pressure and trying to pull up on this side. So there definitely needs to be something to prevent this from lifting on this side. So I took the glove off because I was able to feel there's quite a bit of air movement here and a little bit of air movement down here as well. There's a big cutout here, and I'm not really sure why that is exactly. It may be to allow the air to be drawn in so that the majority of the chips come out the back. But with us having a dust collection, I think it makes more sense to close some of this off. And I've made a filler piece just out of cardboard for now. We can eventually make this out of some other material. And I think that's going to help to increase the airspeed here and also promote a little bit more draw from the bottom. One chip over out the back, one chip on the floor, on the back. Front's a bit different story. There is a little bit here, there's a little bit on the floor. What I found was that towards this side is where we had the majority of the problems. And I think there's not enough air movement over on this side. So this is where I want to make a slight little change. I'm going to close this off a little bit more as well. I blocked this with a little bit of duct tape, and I like to run some parts through and see if we can see what's happening inside. Well, that was definitely a lot better than before, and the dust collector's just eating the sawdust for breakfast. The hose size seems perfect. I don't think there's any chance that that's going to get clogged up, but I was kind of hoping for a little bit better dust collection, to be honest with you. So I think I'd like to take a different approach. I'd like to take the top of this off and see if we can do something right at the source rather than trying to capture it all at the back and trying to plug holes and increase airspeed and things like that. I think we can maybe do one better. It's strange that so much air is coming in or being pulled in from here when it really should be pulled up from here, and there's quite a gap. So I think that we can do a much better job of pulling air in from here where the cutter head is. I'm at a bit of a crossroads. I have to make a decision about where I want this to come off. Do I want it to come off the back, which is against what I was originally wanting to do, and have the hose dangling down, or find some way of supporting it just at the right height, or again off the side? And after thinking about it for a few minutes, actually more than a few minutes, I think I'm going to continue to come off the side. And I didn't go too crazy with the design. I just wanted to keep simple shapes. So this is basically a cylinder attached to a bunch of pieces I just filled in. Now, this will not be able to accept the top. It has these gussets in here, and I didn't want to have to account for them because it just added some complexity. And it has this piece, a deflector on the back, and that kind of got in the way. I'm not quite sure what I want to do with that yet. So I have a piece of MDF here that covers up that section, and I can fasten it down with the original screws. And this time, rather than the larger cylinder, I've gone with a little bit smaller one, and instead the hose will fit over top of it like you'd typically see. So I'm pretty confident that this one is going to work better, but let's go ahead and set that one back up first, and I'm going to run some pieces through on this side right here where it was having the most trouble, and then we'll set this one up and do the same. So only a few passes and we have sawdust here, and a bit on the floor as well. So hopefully with the change it does improve this. So let's take a look. Well, it's not perfect, but it is quite a bit better than what I had before. And I was running right at the very edge. I ran a few just right here. Now I probably could leave this as it is and paint it or even fiberglass with epoxy, and this would last me a long time, but I would like to level this up, and I'd also like to make something available for any of you who have the same planer and have the same problem as well. So let me show you what I've done. Inside Fusion 360, I've created a very basic model from a 3D scan, and I've also created the top cap as well, just to make sure that I have the right clearances so that this thing does fit in properly, because this is going to be pretty big and I don't want to have any issues. From there, I've created this shape, which is exactly what we did with the cardboard version, but it has a little bit more gradual curve inside of there. It's going to help to funnel some of that sawdust out and into the dust collector. I was able to find the exact font and create the Makita logo on the back there as well, which I think looks pretty cool. But we're running into a problem here. This thing is just massive, and I'm going to need to split it into several parts. So what I've done now is separate it into 3 pieces, and the cool thing about this is that I have different sizes available. So if anybody wants to download this and try and print it themselves, and they can download the adapter size that works for their dust collection system. I have the 5-inch, I have a 4-inch, and I also have a 2.5-inch shop vac adapter. So the really difficult thing about this design is how do we connect these 2 pieces together and have it be a very strong connection, but without impeding the air circulation or airflow on the inside. I have a combination of a dovetail and a scarf joint as well, and I also have a lap joint in one. So this is intended on being a glued connection, but it should come together and actually be pretty strong without glue as well. The dovetails are also slightly tapered. As it gets closer to the final meshing point, it gets a little bit tighter and tighter as well. And to make sure there aren't any issues with this coming together, I've allowed a little bit of clearances in here as well. And the adapters connect to the main body of the dust collector with a slight taper also. This is going to be a pretty large print, so I've printed these samples to make sure it's all going to fit together properly. This is just in matte PLA, printed on the Qidi Plus 4. And when I brought this together, you can see it's a little bit too sloppy. This is a 0.4 millimeter gap, and it's just a little bit too much. So I've gone ahead and reprinted this with a 0.1 millimeter gap, and that ends up giving us this. So the last change was to shrink it down to 0.08 millimeters for the gap, and that should give us a much tighter connection. And that leads us to this. This is printed in PETG carbon fiber. There's a couple imperfections in here, but that's going to happen because this print is nearly 100% solid, and it's very difficult to prevent this from warping. I would say the PETG carbon fiber overall did well, but it didn't do as well up in this dovetail area. You can see some imperfections there. This is the adapter, and this fits on just like so. It is an absolutely perfect fit. I don't actually think I need glue, so all I have left to do is print the mating part and see how this comes together. We are closing in on halfway through the print. It's been about 6 hours. I won't open the door too much. I don't want to release too much heat. So let's come back when it's finished. Ooh, that came off nice. I probably should have just closed the door. These are such big prints that would have helped to keep the heat inside that chamber and probably prevent a little bit of that warpage. And the zipper type of connection here. Don't know what we should name this. I guess we should wait probably until we find out whether it actually works. And this is what it looks like on the inside. You can see a very gradual curve, smooth transition. That should help to guide the sawdust in. And on this side, it was a little bit different. We have that somewhat gradual transition here, but where it met the cutout for the circle, this is the resulting shape. So pretty unique kind of a cutout shape. So really all we have left to do is get this together. This is the exact same font, by the way, as the Makita logo. If you're interested in that font, I will put a link down there below and credit the person who went to the trouble of doing it. Of course, there is that ring as well. Turned out really nice. So I think I will start at the bottom. That went together a lot easier than I was expecting. The adapter ring. And what do you think about that Makita logo? Look at that. Very close to the same shape. Now, if you were paying close attention to what this originally looked like, you'd know that I modified this little flap at the back. And normally I would not modify a machine. I do everything I can to avoid that. But it was cutting off some of the airflow and really complicating the design. So I just put it in the vise and I bent it up. It looks really good. You can see where that warpage comes into play. About 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters in the center there. It's definitely more than I was expecting. So this fits really good, and it's being held down there quite a bit better than I was expecting. I will need to glue this in, but I don't think I even need to glue this. It just isn't going to come apart. And this is really going to be in here all the time. I'm never going to take it out unless I'm trying to maybe clean it or something like that. So let's go ahead, we'll glue this in with some super glue and make sure that doesn't come out. And again, I have a 4-inch, I have a 5-inch, and a 2.5-inch adapter option as well. And I'll also make one more file available, and that will be just the flange, and that means that anybody can take this and adapt it to whatever size they need to. If you're enjoying this type of content, make sure you like the video and subscribe. It really helps to support this channel. We've also just reached that 100,000 goal, so thanks to everyone who has subscribed so far. I probably ran it through about 15 times and this is the result. Very small chips that are ejected out the front. Almost nothing on the floor in front, nothing that's big anyway. There's a little bit falling down here, not much on that side. Overall, a really good improvement over what we had before. Let's take a look to see what kind of sawdust buildup we have. Pretty much nothing. There's a little bit on the super glue. It might have still been wet super glue, but overall, wow, that is clean. Definitely a little bit of static going on. And a little bit of sawdust built up here. And a little bit of sawdust residue at the bottom as well. Interesting. So I wonder whether the PETG is giving a little bit of a static charge. I noticed the chips in the dust collector are also sticking to the side of the bag. Not sure how to avoid that other than to pick a different material. I have already modified the 3D model for this side to remove this big protrusion. I think that was the reason we were getting some sawdust built up in this corner. If you'd like to download this and print it yourself, there are links down there below. They are absolutely free as usual. And it is possible to break this up into more pieces. Maybe the deflector section could be made in 2 pieces and then 3 at the back. But I had the Qidi Plus 4 and it was big enough to do it in just the 3 pieces. So all I have left to do now is do my table saw, my jointer, my compound miter saw, my lathe, my bandsaw, and my CNC. Thanks to each of my patrons for helping to support this channel. And if you want to help support this channel as well, there will be a link down there below. Thank you for watching. Take care. And we'll see you on the next one.